David Sarah.
Hello.
Thank you, Mayor Terziano. We are live.
Okay, Paul. Is Paul there? Because he's trying to get in, and he says they're not letting him in. He can't get in.
Host has disabled my video as well.
Okay, we'll get that fixed up. I'll ask our guests to turn their video and mute themselves off for now until we get into the part of the meeting that we need to hear from you.
Hello, sorry, I was stuck, I think, in the lobby for the last 10 minutes, so I apologize for that.
No problem, we're just getting started now.
Great.
Okay, I think we have everyone. I hope we do.
Do you mind if I just tape record this just so I have it up for a record?
Tanya, Crystal?
The meeting is live, so it is being recorded.
Okay, so you have no problem with me recording it then, is that right?
Nope, because we're also recording, yeah.
Oh, perfect, great. Okay.
All right, thanks. David, I'll ask you to mute yourself and have your screen go dark for now. And the same for you, Brian.
Okay. Okay.
Okay. Okay, I'm going to call the meeting to order, and I will confirm that we have quorum, and I do believe we have all of council. The clerks have assigned movers and seconders for all motions. And I will just make a note as we start that our CAO is not with us tonight due to a slight emergency. So Ms. Maxwell is subbing in for the CAO tonight. Thank you, Kirsten, for that. I have a resolution moved by Councillor Stone and seconded by Councillor Schumacher. It is recommended that the special general committee meeting agenda dated Thursday, April 15th, 2021 be adopted as printed and circulated. All in favor? And that carries. Are there any disclosures of pecuniary interest? Seeing none, we will get right into our reports from municipal officers. Mr. Nagy.
Thank you, Mayor Terziano. In respect to the report ahead of you, the contents within it really has not changed from the report from March 31st. That being said, I did want to highlight as a reminder that the license was revoked under 6.3 after staff received 3 complaints confirmed through the OPP, and that the staff at the time felt it appropriate to revoke the license. With respect to the recommendation, staff are in support of committee's previous decision. However, we would like to remind you that we are the stay-at-home order has been reestablished with the same restrictions that the license was previously revoked. So I'm here for any further questions or clarity on the report, but like I said, it's same context as the March 31st report.
Okay, thanks for that, Chris. Are there any questions of Chris? None at this time. Okay, we will welcome our deputation then for the appeal of this decision. Mr. Serezny, I guess 2 Mr. Serezny's, and Ms. Walkinshaw. You guys can unmute and turn your videos on now if you would like to proceed with your deputation.
Sure.
Okay, so who wants to start?
Hey, I'll start. Thanks. So thank you very much for taking the time. First off, I know it's 5 o'clock on a Thursday, and probably, I guess a lot of you are working from home, so I guess you don't have to rush home. But just kind of wanted to go through sort of the points of the situation here and hopefully articulate sort of our position to kind of give context for everyone. So first off, we appreciate obviously that our license was reinstated. The concern is really related to being on probation, because as we kind of went through the process, we still don't feel that we did anything wrong. We tried, in all honesty, to follow every single rule that was given to us or that we would have known about. Even when the short-term licenses were granted, we applied immediately. We followed all the bylaws. I think there was one complaint that we got from the same person before within the short-term license process, and we addressed it immediately and right away. And in this situation, what was concerning, at least to me, was after we got our license back and we were given sort of the list of the prerequisites and what would happen, and that we were on this probation period, is how does it work if we get a complaint, which was really the core, or at least one of the cores of the issue. And Christopher Nagy was nice enough to send us an email which sort of dictated how they would typically deal with a complaint when it was raised. He said that him or someone from his staff would contact us. There was 2 levels of the complaint. I think the email is within the general committee meeting guideline, which I thought was great. I thought this is a great process, but unfortunately, we weren't notified of any of the complaints during the closure period. And we only realized when we got our license revoked in the mail. So that was the concerning piece. And what I had done was try to reach out immediately to someone from the staff office to say, like, whoa, what's going on here? Like, we didn't even know about these complaints. How are we possibly supposed to rectify something that we have no sort of awareness on? And from the email, like Chris, I apologize, I'm not sure what you like to go by, sent us, it seemed like there's a procedure in place, but it didn't seem like it was followed through this process, which is, again, the concern that I had personally. And now what would make me nervous is any random complaint from whomever wants to call in would then essentially revoke the license and really disrupt a large part of my income and my livelihood. And so that's kind of what worried me. On top of that, I think the other issue here at hand is the nature of the complaints. Like when we got the notice about the closure order, we read the Ontario bylaws, someone needs a housing need, and we said, if we will rent it to anyone, it has to fall under this category to the best of our rational knowledge. So as a next step, I'm going to sort of pass it on to Caitlin, who does all our bookings for the site, and she can kind of walk you guys through how she would vet someone specifically, especially during this process, because she dealt with the 3 people that the complaints were raised on, just to give you context of how a normal rational person could possibly look at someone coming in and make a judgment to the best of their abilities on proceed, whether they're going to move forward or not. So if it's okay, I'll pass the microphone and I'll mute myself onto Caitlin, if you can chime in.
Of course, yes. Thank you so much, Paul. My name is Caitlin. I was hired by Paul back in October as the reservation manager. So I do a lot of the screening, a lot of the customer service, communications between the guest and the bookings. So obviously with the lockdowns, I've been keeping up to date on all the different regulations that come into play. It's ever changing, as everyone knows. So the 3 guests in question, they all relate to me, their specific need of housing under this situation. Now I want to state that during this, I declined 95% of the inquiries, and these are the only 3 that, as far as I could, ascertain from my communication with them, was legit. So the 3 of them, I'm not going to specify their names, but their reasoning, like the one booked literally the same day, they had their furnace broken. So they literally reached out to us and said, hey, we need a place to stay, can we book it? Our furnace is broken. Now, it's not my place to be asking for proof on these details. I confirm that they're all from the same household. Obviously, you can't stay in a house without heat in a Canadian winter. So they booked it. The second guest, similar situation. They had their water heater repairs happening. Now, I did go back and forth a little bit with this guest as well. And I do believe in some of the information that was provided previously. You have the screenshots of this communication between myself and the guest. So they had a water heater repair. So obviously they can't be at their house, if they have no hot water. And the third falls under actually a homeless section. So my understanding is with the stay-at-home order, when you're in between homes, so he had recently separated from his wife and he was actually living at a hotel here in Toronto. And so what ended up happening was that he actually had custody of his 2 children for 5 days. And I mean, you can't be stuck in a hotel room with 2 children. So he ended up booking something outside of the city because it was cheaper to be able to get some space for his children that are going through a very difficult time. So that kind of just gives you the more specific details of those 3 guests. Now, I'm not here to be a lawyer or detective and really really dive in with them and be like, are you sure, send the information. I have to trust on my instincts and trust the guests that they are telling the truth and they are in this situation that they have become into that they had to book through. So I just kind of wanted to give you that rundown of those 3 specific guests. And, I really do try very hard to screen the guests for, older groups that aren't going to be disturbing the neighbors. We want to be a respectful neighbor and as a whole. So all 3 of these guests did get tickets, as you're aware of, and we were aware of. They are all fighting their tickets. Obviously, the tickets have not gone through the system yet, but they are hopeful that they will be thrown out when they provide the proof that they had the need of housing during the lockdown. Now, the main issue is with the OPP situation. We did reach out to the staff sergeant of the Huntsville department after the tickets were issued to sort of get an understanding of why they were given tickets, because what was said between the guest and the OPP and what was told with us was a little bit different. So one of the things that was actually quoted during one of the guests getting a ticket is that we don't care what your reason is. We don't want outsiders here. So I do understand that there is a global pandemic and people don't want others from different cities, but that wasn't part of the regulations that you can't leave your area. So that was just kind of a little situation there with the OPP. Now, we as the host never were ticketed on this. And we actually asked him, if this is the case, and he said that there's a lot of gray area with the regulations and he didn't find us at fault for renting these places out. The OPP gave tickets because they were just there. They didn't actually give them a chance to listen to their reasonings. For the most part, they already had the ticket written before they got to the front door. So it's just kind of a difficult situation, but I truly do believe that I did the best of my ability to screen these guests and they had legitimate reasons for being here under the regulations of Ontario during the lockdown.
Can I just add to that for 1 second?
Yep.
Oh, hi. Yeah, so I actually spoke, I don't know, had about 15 or 20 emails going back and forth, sorry, can you hear me?
Yes.
Yeah, sorry. So I had about 15 or 20 emails going back and forth with Josh Fleming, who is the staff sergeant at the OPP dispatch in Huntsville. And I also, in the other meeting that you guys had, we provided documentation of the guest communications where we actually did make sure that, where we did screen them for needing housing, And then also the conversation via email with Josh Fleming, who said, well, the stay-at-home order, guests it's very vague, but they shouldn't be leaving their cities. I'm like, okay, well, that's like not in the stay-at-home order at all. And there's communication where he actually says, well, I can understand it's very vague. I'm trying to get some clarity on this. And he was never able to get any clarity. There's no lines, no hotlines. The emergency order was very vague. And what one person interprets it and somebody else interprets it are two completely different things. Now, somebody not wanting to stay in a downtown hotel with 2 children while they have to work after they're already getting divorced and probably, already under a lot of duress and stress, I didn't think that we were breaking the emergency ordering by letting somebody come and stay. Somebody who come, brought up all their own food, didn't go out, didn't leave, just literally wanted to stay there. And I also think it's a lot safer for somebody to just be isolating in something like that than a hotel environment as well. So that was never the way Josh thought the Ontario order might be implying is actually nowhere written. And those are going to go to court, and I'd be shocked if they actually got convicted on those tickets. So I really, and another thing what Paul said earlier is, if Huntsville, if there's a real intent, and this is going back to Chris Nagy, and I'm not saying it was you, but, if you guys, want to work with hosts and, want an open line of communication, which ultimately, I would assume you guys do, why wouldn't you just pick up the phone and call us, right? If this you wrote, it happened 3 times, you didn't even call once. Not even once, not a letter about these 3, not a phone call. Why don't you talk to us instead of just shutting down our livelihood? I don't understand. That part really didn't make any sense to me. And maybe you can, I don't know, Chris, maybe if you could answer that. It's kind of hard to really do these things, especially when we, put our heart and soul into it. And, all of a sudden now we have to pull the listings, have to cancel all these guests. And there's a lot of time and effort that go into this. People make all these plans, and then all of a sudden you call us, you're like, okay, you're done. No communication, no nothing, and this is our livelihood. This is how we eat. Right. So, is a phone call that much, it's like a letter. Right. So, okay.
Chris, just to follow up with that question, were we made aware on each infraction or only after the 3?
So we were made aware of 2 infractions, and then a following infraction occurred within, it was actually a couple days of receiving the first infraction notice. So it all happened, fairly fast. And we were going on as per the bylaw, the 3 complaints being established and going from there. So. Yeah.
And just, Chris, one more question. Do we normally, if an infraction occurs, do we contact the Airbnb host as soon as we receive any notice of any infraction, or do we wait for 3?
So the bylaw isn't clear on that. However, what Paul and David were referring to as far as the procedure was in response to moving forward with their property in particular, to make sure that there was that communication between hosts and the town before there was a potential revoking of the license. So staff have been we have learned from this, and moving forward there will be that communication to host going forward. Yeah.
If I could just interject for a quick second. When we did receive a complaint once before after an infraction, we dealt with it right away and there was no other issues. So just to raise the point, and listen, I understand that this is new territory for everyone, essentially going through COVID. Obviously no one, can really nail down exactly how this is supposed to be dealt with. But you can see specifically in our case, when we were made aware of it, we started telling every single person, you can't have a fire during this time. You don't want another complaint. And we certainly would have been very strict with anyone if there was even a shadow of a doubt about anything that we were doing incorrectly regarding these specific complaints as well. Sorry, David, if you wanted to jump in, please go ahead.
No. That's it's just like, it's just, I don't know how we're supposed to, or anybody is supposed to operate a business not knowing what the rules are, not being communicated properly, or any type of relationship. So it's, you know, and then also like another thing, it affects, like, you know, when we have to pull down our listing, like we do a really good job and it takes about, you know, it takes months and months to build back to where we were too, right? So it's like not even just that, you know, immediate thing, it has a big ripple effect.
Okay. Appreciate your deputation, and I'm going to open it up to council for questions if you're agreeable to that. Council, questions? Councillor Weeb.
Thank you, Worship. This, I guess, it would be directed to Caitlin. Could you tell me, during the stay-at-home order, how many days was the cottage not rented?
Out of the entire, so I think it was about a 4-week stay-at-home order. Out of like the 31 days, we'd only rented it for a total of 10 days. So the one guest was there for 5 days while he waited for his new home with his children. The other 2 guests were, I think, 2 days. The one might have extended. I'd have to go back into the records. The one might have extended an extra day because the repairs to the furnace were taking longer. So it was empty for 3/4, if not, 3/4 of the month.
Deputy Mayor Alcock, did you have your hand up?
I did. Thank you, Your Worship. Just a quick question I would ask our guests, and that is, so are you asking council to basically wipe your slate clean? And so
exactly.
Okay, that's what I wanted to know. Are you also asking us to adjust our process to update our bylaw, or is it just wipe your slate clean as if none of this happened?
Well, so I apologize for interjecting while you're talking.
No, that's fine.
I would say, what we would like is to have a clean slate and to deal with it kind of moving forward. I mean, if we have the power to adjust the bylaw, I think that would be, a great request to ask. Kind of reverting back to Chris Nagy's email, the process that he outlined is a great process. Like, if that's the way that it was being dealt with, that's perfect. I would say, yes, that's awesome. And we would really appreciate that. So I think I've kind of answered both of those, but in short, yes, we would like to wipe the slate clean, and whatever, internal process to, I guess, tweak things would be certainly appreciated.
Other questions, council? I have one directed to you, Caitlin. We're back in a stay-at-home order. If you got any of the 3 requests that you granted back in January and early February, would you grant them today?
If they were the same, let's say the same 3 guest inquiries, yes. Because under the regulations that are laid out in the Ontario frameworks, they would be allowed.
Okay.
Just a note too, and just for some more context, we also have to be careful when we accept people not to discriminate against, or there's like a lot of procedures that they recommend that we deal with as well as being a host. So obviously, if something is legitimate and we're able to accommodate it, we generally try to accommodate it. And it's got a negative effect for a few things. If you just simply reject everyone, your ranking goes down. But also, I wouldn't want to be in a position where we said, you can't come here for a reason that's not valid or legitimate. And maybe that would open us up to some, I don't know, whatever, some difficult situations. Not being articulate, but just a point to add.
And sorry, I just want to clarify. We have shut it down for right now for this lockdown. Honestly, until we get this sorted, not only with the city, but with also the OPP, we don't want our guests that are already going through a severe situation to have to be dealing with the OPP showing up and having to fight tickets. So it's, for both parties, it's just not worth it at this moment. So just to let you know, we haven't been booking. It's fully closed down at the moment.
Okay, Councillor Armour.
Thank you, Worship. Actually, I have two questions. The first one is the gentleman with the two children.
Yes.
Why were the OPP even called originally for that house?
So the OPP were only ever called simply because there was a car in the driveway. There was never any actual legitimate complaint other than there was a car in the driveway and the neighbors knew that it was a short-term rental. So they just automatically assumed we were breaking the law on all three situations. None of the guests, like the one guest, they were like, we haven't even been outside.
Okay, and my second question, are these repeat renters or of this Airbnb, or was this their first time they'd ever, and how did they hear about you?
These three probably found us on Airbnb. I do not believe they were repeat customers of ours. So they would have just done a general search for any properties like that would have worked for them.
Okay, with that then, how come in the communication, the texts that we read, you actually have names in there? Did you enter those names afterwards? Is that how they got there?
No, I just took screenshots from our Airbnb. So we get their names within Airbnb, the messaging.
Okay. All right, thanks.
One of the texts that you showed us, Caitlin, I believe the text came in around 2 in the afternoon on the Friday for a rental that started on the Friday or the Saturday.
Yes, so I do believe that was, I'm not going to say their names just because I think that, I don't know, I'm not supposed to or not, but that was actually, I have the information here. So yeah, she was the one who her furnace broke down. So she was trying to find a place for her and her family to go to last minute. And obviously I don't blame them for not wanting to book a hotel here in Toronto. If they're even from Toronto, I'm just assuming that.
Okay, any other questions, Council? Okay, with that then,
There's a couple of hands up.
Karen, we got.
Sorry, guys, I'm watching two screens. Okay, Councillor Withy.
Thank you, Your Worship. I guess a couple of quick ones as well. I note in the history of the property that there's been multiple complaints at this location before the bylaw came in. So this is very concerning to me not only have we got these instances that we know about, we've also been getting lots of complaints here. I can tell you, I guess, contrary to the information we just heard, I received calls at my home from a neighbor complaining of a loud party next door. This is during the lockdown. And that's where I said, well, this is, lockdown stuff, you should call the OPP. So I don't know about the stories about a car in the driveway being the trigger or whatever. It certainly isn't the information I got. And it seems to me from the staff report that this has been an ongoing problem, not these issues. So not the issues that we're talking about today. So you say in your report, Christopher, multiple complaints. I don't know if you have a number of those and what those entail, but it seems to me like there's more of a systematic problem with this particular property that we're hearing more from. I would suggest, certainly personally, because we councillors, we all get calls than any other property in the area.
If I can, yeah. Oh, sorry, please go ahead. Apologies.
Well, you're asking us to change course here when the track record here isn't just the situations we're actually talking about that cause the license to be revoked. There's an ongoing problem here that I think that, needs to be demonstrated that is being addressed because, these things are a reality in our communities and they're upsetting for neighbors. We get it. We get it that people are making money off of these places. We're not out here to, affect people's livings necessarily, but we got to be good neighbors with this stuff.
Listen, I completely agree with you. And with all due respect, whenever there was, first of all, when we first started renting, it was new to everyone. whenever there was any complaint, we dealt with it right away. We got the license right away. We were informed of all the bylaws. And since we got our license, we had one complaint that we rectified immediately. So it's not like we're sitting here trying specifically to, disrupt the community. It's simply not the way that we're conducting ourselves. I think it's one of the largest spaces in the area in terms of size. So it's going to attract people that want to be bigger groups. And I can tell you for certainty, we don't like the bigger groups. We don't like the complaints. They ruin our space. We've changed over the last 2 years of how we rent to people. We've shifted, trying to get smaller groups, specifically families. We really, really, really work hard. And that's why we hired specifically Caitlin. And we've refined our process quite a bit. I mean, you can look specifically in the staff report, and it says we applied for our license right away. And there was only one complaint after that. When we read all the bylaws, we rectified it right away. I think the staff officer talked to the specific renter. And then when we heard about it after, we followed up with them as well and said, you can't come back here and you can't do this if this is the way that you're going to deal with things. So, and listen, I don't mean to, push back on sort of what you're outlining, but I think your narrative is incorrect, at least for the direction that we're really trying to go. We want to be a good neighbor. We don't want to have issues. No one wants to spend our time, down for months and months and on calls with everyone here on this committee. I mean, generally, everyone seems to have a nice smile, but obviously no one really wants to waste their time going through this process.
I'm sorry, just to follow that for a moment. You mentioned that you had a complaint during the last lockdown about a party. We only booked these 3 groups in. They were the only 3 groups that we had the entire time. 2 of the groups were a single parent with their children, and the other was a group of 4. I don't see a group of 4 being allowed. And actually the group of 4 left right after the ticket the next morning. So I don't see them being big party groups. So I'm not sure if that was an accurate complaint or if it was just trying to draw attention to us.
Okay.
That was the issue that caused the OPP to come out, because that person I instructed to call the OPP because of the lockdown. So I didn't go over and check myself. So
no, I totally
I'm sorry. Let me just interrupt. If there was a party, why did
a second here? This is an official council meeting, so please address your comments through the chair, which is myself. This is not going to be a shouting match back and forth. All right.
Okay. So first of all, if there was a party, the OPP would have ticketed, I'm sure, a lot of people. Only one person got a ticket. Second, just to allude to what Paul was saying, we've done a ton of stuff. And yeah, when we started doing this, we had no idea what we were doing. Nobody did. But over the years, we've learned a lot. And there's all kinds of things that we've done. First of all, such as hired Caitlin, who screens excessively, have a minimum age, cap the number of guests at a much smaller number, put cameras on the premises. In the summer, when it gets rowdier, hire a greeter who would go before each guest comes and knock on every single door and tell them that, read them the rules and say, if we have any problems, you guys are leaving. We've done a ton of stuff to make sure that we don't have problems like this. And when we do find out, we address it immediately. Now, let me ask you something, Chris. How long have you been with the city of Huntsville in your current role?
You don't get to ask Chris questions. If you have a question for him, you can direct it through me.
Sure. So my question that I'd like to ask Chris is, since you started doing this, have you noticed a dramatic improvement other than the OPP incidents for the Ontario order? Have you noticed a dramatic decrease in people calling in or about issues or anything specific to our property?
Chris?
So through you, Chair Terziano, within the report, we've highlighted the complaints that we've received. So I would say we've noted the 3 complaints that had revoked the permit, and there were 2 additional complaints from last year, one being a burning complaint, which are highlighted in the report. Previously, the complaints were around the zoning aspect and actually, you know, an Airbnb being used at that property and not a permitted use through the zoning, as well as potential septic concerns at the property. So hope that answers your question there.
Thanks, Chris. Councillor Schumacher, you had a question.
Thank you, through you, Your Worship. I guess mostly to Caitlin, but some of it probably has been answered. You did talk about a screening process that you do, I guess, some clarifying sort of to that extent. And does that include, and I mean, I'll be honest, I don't really know hotels and Airbnb regulations when it comes to COVID screening, but like I know I have to screen to go to my dentist or whatever, right? So do you guys have something along those lines when you do screening? Do you also do some COVID screening as well for people coming out of area?
You mean like, you know, have you been in the country? Like, have you been out of the country? Have you been quarantined? Things like that? Yeah,
like those basic questions that everybody's kind of supposed to ask, and as well as your basic screening process for someone to come to the property.
Yes, we do. So once, before even booking, we'll send them just a couple of quick questions to make sure that they have, you know, haven't been in contact with somebody and they haven't been leaving the country, just to kind of get an understanding. I mean, a lot of the times the guests volunteer a lot of information. You know, they're like, you know, we don't leave our homes, or, you know, we've been vaccinated, things like that. So, you know, people are very forthcoming with that information.
Councillor Weep.
Thank you, Your Worship. I'm trying to get to the heart of the matter of how plausible, in your judgment, it is that someone who has a hot water repair in Toronto, we think, needs to go to a large luxury cottage in Muskoka. I can't tie those two things together. It just doesn't square with me. So in my judgment, I would say that the screening judgment and the judgment that you are claiming to be exercising to a high standard as you can, I think it fails this litmus test in my opinion. And I'll leave it at that.
Sure. So I can follow up with that. So really, it comes down to, it's not my place to judge where somebody should be choosing to, you know, get out of their house for during their time when they have to get repairs or renovations or like whatever the emergency situation does require. It's not laid out in the regulations or the Ontario framework. It is not restricted to your same health district. It's not restricted that you can't travel within anywhere in Canada, because that would be against the Canadian rights. So it's just not my place to dictate that. Sure, I could be like, well, maybe you should just rent a hotel here in Toronto. But at the same time, like if I was in that situation, I wouldn't want to rent a hotel in Toronto because, you know, my risk is a lot higher than going to a private house. Now, you know, you can rent something maybe closer, but at the same time, the price is going to be a lot more than if you get out of the city into the countryside where cottage rentals are a lot cheaper. So like at the end of the day, it's not our decision to state where they should be renting. They have a need. They dictated that in the communications with me. And that's as far as I can go with that information. I hope that kind of helps.
Are there any further questions, Council? Councillor Armour.
Thank you, Your Worship. Just one quick one. I noticed when David was talking, he said something about due to the police coming there and your license being revoked, that you guys had to pull the listing and cancel all the reservations that month. Was that continuing the same month? You had more reservations, more people coming there to stay? Is that what you meant by that?
Oh,
so
go ahead, David.
Go ahead.
Okay. No, I just, so obviously when we got the license, we closed it down because we didn't have a license anymore. And so we had to cancel any bookings. I think by the time we got the license, we were actually at a lockdown period. So we did have upcoming reservations for the next month. So we did have to cancel all of those, and we've had the listing closed down.
And sorry, let me just interrupt. So some of these other reservations, and correct me if I'm wrong, Caitlin, but were made well in advance prior to a lockdown, right? So if somebody books, if there's a lockdown for this month and we have a reservation for 2 months out, right, we're not going to cancel that until we know the lockdown got extended, right? Because if they lift the lockdown, then obviously people are allowed to stay, right? So these reservations weren't being taken for other people. These were made prior. And I don't even know I just know that we had, I don't even know how many we had, if we had a lot or if we only had a couple, but I just remember talking about canceling basically everything, either even out into May or whatever. So
I think the license, we actually got the notice on, I believe it was February 16th, although it was dated on the 8th, and I think the period ended on 12th. Again, I don't have the information in front of me. So in any event, we got the notice pretty much at the end of the closure period.
Caitlin, did the Airbnb have rentals for the month of January and early February prior to the lockdown that you had to cancel?
Yes, it did.
And then, and these new rentals as housing needs were not any of the same ones that you had to cancel?
They were not. These all came quite last minute. So they were not pre-booked reservations. I remember calling all of the guests and how disappointed they were that we had to cancel on them.
Okay. Any other questions, Council? Okay, I am going to ask the clerk to, I can see the clerk there, Tanya.
I think Councillor Weeb might have had another question. I'm not sure.
Oh, sorry. Did you, Councillor Weeb?
That'd be great. One quick one.
Yeah, sure.
So the last thing I'm trying to square is all this effort and all this process, and we're sitting in a place where you're selling the property. Can you also square that with me?
We would prefer not to sell the property.
Yeah, we were testing the market, and to be honest, I think we've kind of gone through it in detail. I don't really know what else there is to kind of touch base on. If we didn't have issues, we wouldn't even have tested the market, which it's off, by the way, now.
Oh, because it was on today.
Well, if it was, it's terminating any day now. And to note, anyways, in any event, obviously we can't control lockdowns, but I can say that this issue, like this particular item that we're dealing with, has basically taken, quite a bit of income from essentially what we use to live. So it's not like this is something that was a great situation. We've definitely been very affected, and we prefer not to sell it. And in any event, like I said, if it hasn't been down, it will be soon. We just terminated our listing agreement.
Okay, I'm going to ask for questions one last time, and I'm going to watch everybody to make sure I don't miss one more. Okay, I'm going to ask the clerks to remove you guys into somewhere else that you can probably continue to watch, except for the fact that I think we're going into closed session, but I'll ask that to happen for the clerks to do that. Okay. Council, I have a resolution moved by Councillor Weeb and seconded by Councillor Withy. Be it resolved that the next portion of the meeting be closed to the public commencing now at 5:42 p.m. for the purpose of considering the following matter pertaining to the following section under the Municipal Act. Advice that is subject to solicitor-client privilege, including communications necessary for that purpose. License status for short-term rental accommodation property 207 Woodland Drive. All in favor? And that carries, and that, council, means we zoom out and come back in under the closed session link, please. Are we live yet? There we go.
Yes, Mayor Terziano, you're live.
Great, thank you so much. Okay, Council, we're back in open session, and we do have a resolution coming out of closed session. And I'm going to ask Crystal to share the screen because it wasn't in our agenda package, so that the public can see the resolution. And I do need a mover and seconder. Moved by Deputy Mayor Alcock and seconded by Councillor Armour. Be it resolved that committee uphold General Committee's decision GC 5021 made on March 24th, 2021 to reinstate the license with the following condition. 1, the licensee be put on probation until the end of 2021, where the 3-strike process be excluded for this property and any complaints received be evaluated by staff, which may result in the immediate loss of the license. And further, that written reasons will follow. Questions? All in favor? Opposed? And that carries. Okay, Council, that was short and sweet. I have a resolution moved by Deputy Mayor Alcock and seconded by Councillor Fitzgerald. It is recommended that we do now adjourn at 6:25 p.m. All in favor? And that carries. Thank you, Council. Thank you, staff.
Thanks. Good night.